World of Lucid Dreaming and the Lucid Dreaming Experience Magazine invite you to join me, Robert Waggoner, as we explore the nature of lucid dreams and the tips and techniques that make lucid dreaming easier and more profound. Hi everyone, I'm Robert Waggoner, and I'm really pleased to be part of this World of Lucid Dreaming event. I'm a co-editor of the Lucid Dreaming Experience Magazine, which is available for free at luciddreamingmagazine.com. And also I'm the author of 2 books on lucid dreaming, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, that I think is in its 16th printing, and also Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, with co-author Carolyn McCready, that I think has been reprinted more than 5 times. So I'm a longtime lucid dreamer and happy to have you here. And today I want to talk about an article that was in the Lucid Dreaming Experience Magazine, because sometimes in our magazine, we just really have some exceptional articles, and I wanted to make people aware of one that came from a psychotherapist named Virginia Bennett. And I heard her speak at an International Association for the Study of Dreams conference, and she was just really an exceptional presenter and also a wonderful person as well, had some great ideas. But in her waking life, she's a psychotherapist, and she had some views about lucid dreaming. So if you haven't seen the Lucid Dreaming Experience Magazine, I just want to mention some of our past issues really quick. In March of 2023, in that issue, which you can read at luciddreamingmagazine.com, I interviewed a woman who has been blind since birth, but she became a lucid dreamer. And she read my book, my second book, and it really helped her as a blind since birth lucid dreamer learn how to deal with the lucid dreaming realm. So I hope, if you've ever wondered about being blind and also a dreamer or lucid dreamer, I hope you'll check that out. Also, in our June 2023 magazine, I interviewed a gentleman, Jose, who had a traumatic brain injury. And in fact, the doctors gave him 1 year to live. And in this interview, basically what he did, because there was no cure, he decided he would try to have a lucid dream after he had read my books, and where I talk about examples where it appears lucid dreamers have healed themselves within a lucid dream. And apparently he healed himself of this traumatic brain injury. In fact, he told me separately that it was like someone had pushed the reset button on his brain function and reset it back to normal parameters. And he said it was truly phenomenal. But the issue that we're talking about today, of course, is psychotherapist Virginia Bennett. And she wrote this article in the magazine on psychological resistance to lucid dreaming. And so I'm just going to give you some of the highlights of it because I found it so fascinating. So I'll begin. So Virginia Bennett, she's been a lucid dreamer for a long time, I think probably 40 years or so. And she writes in the article that the first 20 years, she would probably have 3 or 4 lucid dreams a month, and they just happened spontaneously for the most part. Some of them were induced, but a lot of them just happened spontaneously. And then as things went along, she began to have fewer and fewer lucid dreams, and she began to wonder about this topic of psychological resistance. And so she writes, how can you want to have lucid dreams, do all the due diligence, and learn the techniques, but it doesn't seem to work? In psychology, this may connect to what we call resistance, or an unconscious defense mechanism that works to avoid one's conscious intent. As a psychotherapist, I'll discuss some ways to approach resistance and potentially overcome it. So she differentiates the 2 types of resistance because she feels like beginners might have a different type of resistance than an experienced lucid dreamer. So she writes that sometimes beginners naturally deal with an innate fear of the unknown. So you read about lucid dreaming, but you really don't know what it's going to be like for you. And so you've never had a lucid dream, and so you might just have that kind of sense of caution or concern or a little bit of fear of the unknown. And she writes that sometimes beginners will resist any change to the current reality, any change to the status quo. Even though they want to have a lucid dream, there's still a part of them that is this unconscious defense mechanism that wants to maintain the status quo at all costs and will resist any change. So she writes, for these people, especially beginners, probably the fundamental thing is adopting an attitude of trust and basically surrendering to the process, to accepting the process. And once you let go of those inner guards, then all of a sudden a lucid dream is likely to happen. But for some people, beginners have their own special set of resistance. Now, for experienced lucid dreamers, she says they might have their own unique type of resistance as well, because they've learned that they have to surrender to the unknown. But if they've been lucid dreaming for a long while and then it stops, then they have to discover that again. Again, they have to learn how to surrender to the unknown. And also, it would probably help if they adopt a beginner's mind, even though they might have lucid dreamed for 5 or 10 years or whatever. Because a beginner's mind is always ready to explore and experiment. And that's part of getting back on the game after you've been a long-term lucid dreamer who suddenly finds that you no longer are lucid dreaming. So part of the resistance is, are you ready to explore and experiment? Because if you're not, you probably won't get back into lucid dreaming. And then you have to sometimes ask yourself, in the lucid dreaming, are you being asked to change or to grow? And so, what changes are being asked of you by getting back into lucid dreaming? So again, this is for experienced lucid dreamers who have had a lot of success with it, but then they find that, they go 6 months, a year, or whatever, and they haven't had a lucid dream. What's going on there? So for a lot of us, we have to think, well, did I change my job? Did I get married? Did I get divorced? Did I whatever? Is there something big that's happened in my life that's keeping me from having a good dream recall, a good dream life? Am I so busy at work or whatever, for the last year on some big project that I haven't been able to focus on lucid dreaming? There might be those kind of more simple explanations of why we're not having lucid dreams. But for some of us who it just seems to spontaneously have disappeared, we might have to focus on lucid dreaming again, but with a new kind of beginner's mind that's ready to explore and experiment, and also ready to change and grow, because that's part, I think, of the lucid dreaming path. So she goes on to write that experienced lucid dreamers need to help learn how to facilitate this change. So she says one thing that she's realized when it comes to facilitating change is the first thing you want to do is slow down. And so what she wants us to do when she says slow down is she wants us to become more mindfully aware of non-helpful patterns of thinking, of non-helpful patterns of behaviors, non-helpful patterns of emotions. She says if you have to become aware of those. Because if you're constantly giving yourself that kind of talk, I'm no good at lucid dreaming, or lucid dreaming is hard, or whatever, that's a non-helpful pattern that you've gotten into. And so you've got to become mindfully aware of that. And then the important thing down here, she says, once you become aware of the non-helpful pattern, then you've got to interrupt the pattern. You've got to change the pattern. But she writes, slow down enough to see what you think, what you feel, or what you act that sets up conditions for not having lucid dreams. So again, you got to slow down enough to begin to see these patterns of, you might call it self-sabotage, you might call it something else instead. But once you slow down and begin to examine maybe how your thoughts have changed, maybe how your reality has changed in your emotionally or behaviorally or whatever, since you've ceased lucid dreaming, then you might begin to see, oh, there's a pattern here. I've begun to doubt myself. I've begun to worry about lucid dreaming. I have this new fear. I saw this video on YouTube, and now I got this new fear about lucid dreaming. And that's behind the resistance to lucid dreaming. So slow down and try to identify those patterns. She goes on that experienced lucid dreamers should become aware of non-useful self-talk like lucid dreaming is hard. Because when you're telling, it's like that famous hypnotherapist Milton Erickson said, the unconscious is always listening. And so when you're telling yourself lucid dreaming is hard, lucid dreaming is impossible, and all that kind of negative stuff, then because the unconscious is always listening, it's basically going to reflect back to you what you believe, what you think. And so as long as you're giving yourself that kind of self-talk, then you're energizing that kind of experience of not having lucid dream. So in the magazine, on page 17, she goes into a whole part about how you could dialogue with yourself. And that's kind of get into a series of questions that she provides that might help you understand the nature of your resistance. So here's some questions that she suggests that you could ask yourself. So there with a piece of paper, read this article, and then she gets to questions to answer. I don't want to have a lucid dream because fill in the blank. I don't want to have a lucid dream because it's too scary, because it asks me to grow, because it wants me to change, whatever it is. I don't want to have a lucid dream because fill in the blank. In this way, you begin to dialogue with the self. You begin to learn what is behind the resistance. Or you could do a different kind of question that you need to answer. What I find difficult about lucid dreaming is blank. It takes too much time. It takes too much focus. I got to work too hard. I feel sorry for myself. Yada, 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 whatever it is. What I find difficult about lucid dreaming is blank. Fill in that blank. What do you find difficult about lucid dreaming? All of a sudden, you might realize that, oh, that's where the area is. That's the area that I need to work on in order to get back on the lucid dreaming pathway. Then she has some kind of interesting ways of getting to the point. How about this question? If I wanted to avoid having lucid dreams, I would blank. What would you do if you wanted to avoid having lucid dreams? Oh, I'd stop keeping a dream journal. I would go to bed late and have to wake up early to get to work. I would drink or smoke or do whatever. And I know that would cut down on my lucid dreaming. So sometimes when you ask it in that way, all of a sudden it brings out the pattern of behavior. If I wanted to avoid having lucid dreams, I would, and then you go, oh, gosh, I guess I'm doing that. Or she also has another great question. If I had more lucid dreams, then I would feel what? If I had more lucid dreams, then I would feel what? A lot of us said, oh, would feel great if we had more lucid dreams. But some of us would, oh, if I had more lucid dreams, then I'd have to change more. And what does the ego resist? Changing. So why am I not having lucid dreams? Because I, the ego self, do not want to change. And so you get to these really interesting areas of the psyche when you begin to dialogue with the self and really understand how you feel about things. She goes on to talk about sometimes there's minor adjustments that people can make. So she had one client get into a meditative state, and as he got into this meditative state, she asked him, now you're going to connect with your inner knowing and ask it, what minor change could I make that would help me have lucid dreams? And suddenly the person blurted out, I have too much light in the room. The light from the clock, the light from the windows, the light from, various sources. And so what this person did, they got some blackout curtains and they reduced the brightness of their clock by their bed. And that night they had a lucid dream. So sometimes there's minor adjustments that a person can make, but you have to kind of get into a meditative state and figure out what those minor adjustments are, according to psychotherapist Virginia Bennett. And then she also mentions that sometimes we have limiting beliefs. Like she writes, this can be an embedded belief like lucid dreams are weird and people who have them are weird. So what about that? What if you start thinking like that? Oh gosh, people who have lucid dreams are weird. Or one of your friends says that, hey, lucid dreams are weird. Oh, that's my friend talking. Now I don't want to have lucid dreams because only weird people have lucid dreams, according to my friend who I admire and care about. And so sometimes when you begin to look into these kind of limiting beliefs and ideas, on a rational level, you realize, oh, that doesn't really make sense. But on an emotional level, that might be really powerful. So again, I'm just giving you a brief overview of Psychological Resistance to Lucid Dreaming by Virginia Bennett, but you can read the whole article in our magazine by going to luciddreamingmagazine.com. So I did want to mention, we're going to open it up for questions here for the next 40 or so minutes. But I did want to mention, sometimes I've noticed this happen. I remember one time I was in Ireland giving a weekend workshop, and a young guy raised his hand and said he hadn't been able to lucid dream for a year. What's going on? And I told him, in my experience, sometimes what stopped me from having lucid dreams as an experienced lucid dreamer is sometimes I would go back to that last lucid dream and I would see that something happened in that last lucid dream that asked me to grow and change, and I wasn't ready for it. And then what happened as a result? My lucid dreaming stopped. So it wasn't like I consciously said, oh, now I'm going to shut down lucid dreaming. It was on an unconscious level. I thought, oh, wow, I'm being asked to grow and change. I'm not ready for that. And on an unconscious or subconscious level, I shut it down. So this young guy said that at the end of the workshop, he realized what had happened to him a year earlier when he stopped lucid dreaming. And I said, okay, tell the class. And he said, what happened? A year earlier, he sat down one evening to watch a movie on lucid dreaming with his father, because he himself was big into lucid dreaming, thought it was great, and his father, hadn't even really understood what the concept was. And so they watched this great movie, and he turned to his father, and his father, who he really loves, said, what a bunch of rubbish. How stupid. And all of a sudden, in the workshop, the guy realized that ever since that moment, he had stopped lucid dreaming. And again, on a rational level, that really doesn't make sense. But on an emotional level, that really impacted him because he loved his father, and he wants to be favored by his father and be admired by his father, but he shut it down. And I assume since that time, since that realization, he's realized that and moved on. I've had another place where I've realized that sometimes in lucid dreams, we have really unexpected big experiences. In my first book, Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self, I mentioned that I had probably been lucid dreaming for 15 years or so. And one night I was having a lucid dream, and then I had a false awakening. And then I had 6 false awakenings after the first false awakening. And I remember waking up, or that last false awakening, I was thinking, if I wake up in the real world and I'm married to a brunette and we have 3 kids and an SUV, I'm just running with it because I'm sick of all these successive false awakenings. But what that did, just without really thinking about it, it kind of shut down my lucid dreaming for a couple months. You know, it was such an unexpected experience. I'd had false awakenings before, but when you have multiple false awakenings, one after the other, you know, then that's a little bit of a super odd experience. So sometimes you have those odd experiences, and after a while you work through it and you realize, oh yeah, other people have had this, and everyone wakes up and eventually, and so it's not a big deal. But I've seen some people who have had interesting lucid dream experiences. Like, let's say this, that you have a really scientific view of the world, that if science hasn't proved it yet, then you don't know if you want to believe about it. So let's say you have a lucid dream where you meet a deceased relative. Okay, they're a deceased relative, they've been dead for 10 years, I went to their funeral. Oh, but so this has to be a dream, I'm dreaming this. So you know you're lucid, and they pass on to you, the deceased relative, some information that was unknown to you. And then when you wake up, you search it out and find that they gave you information that was outside of your own knowing. Now, for some people, they would be really excited by that. But if your worldview is, once you die, you're dead, that's it, then this is a really, causes you to really restructure your viewpoint about things. And so if you have this kind of thing happen to you, you might shut down lucid dreaming for a while until it takes an opportunity to resolve this quandary, to kind of get to what's going on there. So anyway, we're going to open it up for questions now. And so I think, Jake, you want to help us out here? Or I'll go up to the chat here and see what we're going here. So. Okay. Okay, we're going to the Q&A here. So Chris Steele writes, I have a QHHT hypnosis therapy coming up. Would it be advantageous that I ask the hypnotist to ask my higher self to make themselves more known in my dreams and give me a gentle nudge to wake up in dreams? That's interesting, Chris. So basically, it sounds like in the hypnosis session, you want to instill the idea that you'll become aware within dreams, and ask your higher self, if you prefer that term, to give you that nudge to wake up in dreams. So you can always give it a go. You know, a lot of people have used hypnosis to help their lucid dreaming. In fact, there was a study a long time ago by a researcher at the University of Virginia. I'm blanking out on his name right now, but he did a study where in his class of psychology students, because he was a hypnotist, he realized which ones were most suggestible. And then he suggested to them that that night they would have a dream, and in that dream there would be a figure that they could use to help them become lucidly aware. And so one young woman that night, she dreamt of a woman in a black cloak, like a witch might wear. The next night, the woman had a dream, and she sees the woman in the black cloak, like she had seen in the previous night's dream. So suddenly she realizes, oh, this is a dream, because that was the dream figure I saw last night when I did the post-hypnotic suggestion. And so as a result of that, she went on to have a lucid dream. But he found, compared to the hypnotized group of students versus the control group of students, there was like a 60% difference in the number that became lucidly aware. And so hypnosis can help, I think, just the idea of it. But so Chris, I'd give it a go and see what happens. You just never know. So, so V writes, hi, when I'm lucky enough to become lucid, I always start by levitating, and that is my trigger for me to know that I'm dreaming. But they collapse so quickly. Everything is always quite dark despite doing all the right things, such as staying calm, rubbing hands, saying I'm dreaming, and clarity now. Any advice? Okay, so V, here's what I've discovered in lucid dreaming. So sometimes, by virtue of our beliefs, we create patterns that get reflected out there in the lucid dream. So like, here's an example. A person in a lucid dream, they become lucidly aware, but they themselves feel that they can only fly 6 feet high. That's all the higher they can go, is 6 feet. Once they get above 6 feet, everything will fall apart, everything will collapse. And so what happens is this becomes something of a self-fulfilling prophecy. They just have come to believe it so much that when they violate the rule of going above 6 feet, everything falls apart, and so they stay within 6 feet. And so a belief like that is just a habitual thought, something you tell yourself over and over until it becomes your belief. But obviously, that's not a rule for everybody. Other people are flying hundreds of feet, thousands of feet in the dream space in their lucid dreams. So what you begin to do is this: you begin to change your belief. Every time you find yourself thinking that lucid dreams collapse too quickly, or lucid dreams are always dark, tell yourself, no, not anymore. In my dreams, lucid dreams last for a long time, and lucid dreams are very bright. Just begin to tell yourself that as the antidote to the limiting belief. Give yourself the new belief. Every time you find yourself thinking, oh, lucid dreaming is hard, lucid dreams collapse too quickly, lucid dreams are too dark, tell yourself, no, not anymore. From now on, lucid dreams will be very stable, lucid dreams will be quite bright, and I'll have fun in my lucid dreams. So that's what I'd suggest to you to do. Also, I'd say that one thing that's really helpful to have is a goal to achieve in a lucid dream. A lot of people become lucidly aware and they have no goal. They have nothing to achieve, and therefore things go bad really quickly. So write down 3 or 4 goals that you'd like to achieve, and the next time you become lucidly aware, remember what the goal is, because then you have something to strive towards. You just don't get caught up in the current milieu. You've got, oh yeah, I wanted to do this in a lucid dream, and then the intent, that mental energy, will draw you forward deeper into the lucid dream. So thanks for the question. So Nadia has a question. Hi, Robert. I don't know how to interpret the information I get from my lucid dreams. A couple of days ago, I had a lucid dream and asked a mirror for my health condition. I then saw myself with a mustache and a bread knife under my eyes. I don't know what to make of it. How can I make sense of that? I also get other information that is similarly confusing. Any advice? Okay, Nadia, that's a wonderful question, and congratulations for having a lucid dream. You know, so here's what I would do. Let's say you're standing in front of a mirror, you know it's a lucid dream, and you ask the mirror, please show me my health condition. So first, you got to look at the wording of your request, because as I write in my books, the wording of your request can make a huge difference. There was an artist, and he would become lucid, and he would announce, now I will look for art that I can create when I wake up. And he would spend the whole lucid dream looking for art and never find any. So after failing at 3 or 4 times at this, he realized he had to change the wording. So he'd become lucid and he'd announce, now let me look at art I can create when I wake up. and suddenly art would appear on the nearby walls. So he just realized changing the preposition looking for art versus looking at art, when he said, now I'll be looking at art, suddenly art appeared. So first, always make sure that you have a good wording of what your request is. So let's say you ask, lucid dream, show me my health condition. And suddenly you see yourself with a mustache and a bread knife under my eyes. So here's what I would say. First, don't get gobsmacked, don't get wiped out by the first response. I would ask for clarity. So what I would ask is something like, clearly show me what I can do to improve my health. Show me what I can do to improve my health. And then it might show you surrounded by better foods to eat or certain activities to do. And there's your exercise bike or whatever. So asking that kind of question might result in something, but show me my health condition. A mustache, there's a lot of things that you could think about mustaches, but what's important is what you think about mustache. So what you might want to do is an idea that came from a book by, let me see, what's her name? Patricia Garfield. So this is what she suggested. Okay, let's work with the symbol of mustache. So she'd say, get a big envelope or a big piece of paper and write in the center of it the symbol, mustache. And then she'd say, put circles around it. And the first circle, write your personal associations with mustache. And like, oh yeah, Uncle Frank had a mustache, and Uncle Frank was, what kind of guy was Uncle Frank? So this is your personal association with mustache. Or, oh, I watched a movie last week, and there was a guy with a mustache, and he was whatever. That's your personal association. Then she would say, create another circle, and now put the cultural associations. What do you associate in your culture with people who have mustaches? Are they good people, bad people, healthy people, angry people? What kind of people have mustaches? And start to think about that. Then you could think what other things come to you when you think about mustaches. And then you could take a technique from Gail Delaney and connect it to what's going on in your current life. So for example, in what ways am I similar to Uncle Frank? Oh yeah, Uncle Frank had whatever, high blood pressure. Oh, I have high blood pressure too. Or how do these things connect? Oftentimes you'll see that there's some sort of connection. When it comes to the bread knife, it's interesting because bread, at least as I think about it, sometimes when I see bread in a dream, it's not about the food I eat, bread. It's a way of talking about money, is bread. Hey, did you make any bread in that deal? Sure, I made a lot. So sometimes there's kind of funny puns going on here, that you also have to look at. But you could do the same thing with bread knife. Again, I wasn't in your dream, so I don't know what to make of it either. But if I had this kind of situation, what I might do is, if I saw something that I clearly didn't understand or was way too symbolic, I might ask a new question. Show me something I can do to improve my health. Show me something I can eat to improve my health. Show me something I need to let go of in order to improve my health. With those kind of questions, you might get some additional information. So Johannes writes, I've had dreams where my reality check does not work. My last lucid dream, I knew it was a dream, but my reality check failed. But because I knew this was a dream, I kept doing the reality check, and then it worked. So, congratulations, Johns. I have also had that same experience. I used to have a reality check that I would try to poke my finger through an object. And a lot of times it worked. My finger would go right through the object and I'd go, oh yeah, this is a dream, and go on with the lucid dream. But then I began to have false negatives. I would try to poke my finger through something and it felt hard and then I felt uncertain like you did. So I began to realize that I needed to have at least 2 reality checks. So if the poking my finger through the wall or the table or whatever didn't work, then I'd do another reality check. I'd pull out my finger and I would start pulling my finger, and if my finger kept getting longer and longer, then I knew this is definitely a dream. So that's what I would suggest to people. Have at least 2 reality checks. If the first one fails, don't stop there. Get another reality check and give it a go. One time I was in Prague in the Czech Republic, and a gentleman told me his favorite reality check, and he said it was one that had never failed for him. He said he would put out his fingers in what he called the sword fingers, like in Taoism, and he would point at something in the lucid dream and go like this. And if the object fell over, then he knew it was a dream because his sword fingers worked and knocked it over. But have multiple reality checks. One thing I have to say, I taught myself how to lucid dream a long time ago, more than 40 years ago. And so I don't do reality checks very often. Normally, like you, I just know, hey, this is a dream. I'm dreaming this, and I just run with it. So if you want to do a reality check, that's fine. But if you know it's a dream because, here I am at an impossible place and this is totally impossible, this has to be a dream, then you've already figured it out. You don't have to do a reality check. So Clifford Flowers writes, are lucid dreams real life? So if you were in Buddhist dream yoga, in a Buddhist dream yoga monastery for 3 years, in order to learn Buddhist dream yoga reality, their first kind of comment, the monks, is, all this a dream, all this a dream. And so what they mean by that, this is my interpretation, what they mean by that, having been a lucid dreamer for more than 40 years, what they mean by that, all this a dream, they mean all of this exists as a mental construct. Everything that you're sensing right now is coming through your senses. It's being filtered by your mind, your beliefs, your perceptions, your ideas, your emotions. All that's coming into you, but it's still being filtered by you. And so we don't really experience the world as it is. We, in many respects, experience the world as we are. And so when you ask, are lucid dreams real life? I would say lucid dreams are a mental construct. Dreaming is a mental construct. But also when you start to think about it, waking life exists as a mental construct. And there's tons of psychological evidence to show that waking life is a mental construct. So are lucid dreams real life? Is a wonderful philosophical question. So Clifford, thank you for raising that, and I hope others will think about that one. KS writes, how do you define lucid dreaming? Please be specific. So normally in my courses, I use the American Psychological Association dictionary definition of lucid dreaming. And you can find it in the 2007 edition of the American Psychological Association. And just let me think what that is for a second. A dream in which the sleeper is aware that he or she is dreaming and may be able to influence the progress of the dream narrative. So that's what the APA says a lucid dream is. a dream in which the sleeper is aware that he or she is dreaming and may be able to influence the progress of the dream narrative. That's their definition by psychologists of what a lucid dream is. Now, most of us would say a lucid dream is any dream in which you realize within the dream that you're dreaming. My very first lucid dream happened probably when I was 10 or 11 years old. I am in the public library looking at books, and suddenly I see a baby Tyrannosaurus Rex walking through the book stacks. And even though I was 10 or 11 years old and had never had a lucid dream before, I thought, wait a second, aren't dinosaurs extinct? How can this be? And as I stood there, I realized, oh, this has to be a dream. And then I thought, well, if this is a dream, then I can wake up and prove it. And I told myself to wake up, and I woke up in bed. So that's how I had my very first spontaneous lucid dream when I was probably 10 or 11 and all. So I realized within the dream that I was dreaming. So KS goes on, please be specific, duration of lucid dreams. You know, a lucid dream can last 5 seconds. You can become lucidly aware, and in 5 seconds, you can become so excited you wake up, or it can go on for a long, long time. Some of my researcher friends have told me that they've been in dream research labs and watched a lucid dreamer signal with their eyes for 45 minutes that they were consciously aware within the dream. Do you need to feel the exit and entrance back into the physical body for lucid dreaming as you defined it? So KS, here I think you're talking about out-of-body experiences. And out-of-body experiences are not lucid dreams. Phenomenologically, they're different. Let's say that later today, God forbid, somebody's driving, gets into a horrible accident, and suddenly, as the ambulance comes, they find themselves floating above the car, looking at their lifeless body on the pavement. That's an out-of-body experience. That is not realizing within a dream you're dreaming. So again, these are two phenomenologically different experiences. Now, when I was a teenager, at the same time I began to lucid dream, I began to have some other interesting experiences. I'd start to fall asleep. Suddenly I'd hear this buzzing and humming around my body, feel this really strange energy. And then I would realize that I'm seeing my bedroom from like 6 or 7 feet above the bed. That's not a lucid dream, because in that experience, nowhere did I realize within a dream that I'm dreaming. That, again, is characteristic of an out-of-body experience. In my first book, I devote an entire chapter to kind of differentiating these two. Now, I also tell people that an out-of-body compared to a lucid dream, in some ways, it's like comparing a mountain lion to a house cat. They're from the same family, the feline family. They got fur, they got a tail, they got pointed ears, and all that kind of thing, but they're not exactly the same. And that's the point that I'm trying to make here. These are not exactly same, as well as having a vibratory state and all that kind of stuff. Normally, that's very something you find in an out-of-body situation. So again, there are certain techniques that lead to out-of-body, certain techniques that lead to lucid dreams, but sometimes a lucid dream technique, especially like a wake-induced lucid dream technique, actually leads to an out-of-body. And that's when people get freaked out, because they were trying to have a lucid dream and now all of a sudden they're in this vibratory state and all. So again, the personal experience here helps you begin to differentiate between the two. And once you realize what state you're in, then you know how to respond, because it does help. There are differences that are significant. But thanks for the question with that. So anonymous attendee wrote, I read somewhere that AI can see what we are thinking based on brain EEG patterns. What can we expect from AI to help us recognize we are dreaming lucidly? You know, it's interesting. There's been some scientific studies where they've had electrodes in the brain of rats or mice, and they've taught them how to go through a maze to get the food, go through the maze to get the food. And then the electrode shows their neural activity during the dream state. And they discovered that, the neural activity began to show that the poor little rat or mice were reenacting this kind of thing, this kind of movement pattern as a result of the maze training. And so it's interesting to think about that. What can we expect from AI to help us recognize we are dreaming lucidly? It might provide some new approaches to techniques that people hadn't considered before, or it might provide some new segues into conscious awareness that we hadn't thought of before. But that's a good question, anonymous attendee. I'll have to think about that one a little bit. Seeing brain EEG patterns and seeing that activity is a little bit different than changing that activity. Seeing it is one thing. Going in there and changing your EEG patterns, that's a little bit of another thing. And so as a result of that, I don't know if it'll help us create technology to help a person become lucidly aware, but who knows? We'll have to see where that one goes. So thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so KS is back. Is lucid dreaming, as you use it, based on some level of control, volition, a certain level of consciousness you have in the lucid dream? Okay, so again, a lucid dream, you realize within the dream you're dreaming. So you have achieved that level of awareness. You know, hey, this is a dream. Now, when it comes to influence and manipulation, I don't like to use the word control. You can influence the lucid dream. You can manipulate yourself within the lucid dream. You might be able to manipulate the entire lucid dream, but sometimes you have lucid dreams that you can't manipulate things very well. So again, yes, in a lucid dream, you have some level of ability to manipulate and influence things. Yes, in a lucid dream, you can make decisions. I want to talk to that dream figure. I want to ask it, hey, what do you represent? Or who are you? And hear what it has to say. I can ignore the dream figure. I can punch the dream figure in the face. I can turn around and walk out the door and fly through the sky. So again, in lucid dreams, you have all of that normally. Normally you do. And have you achieved a certain level of consciousness? There's been some interesting studies. There's one by Ursula Voss and J. Allen Hobson from Harvard. And they had a EEG skull cap, and the person signaled with their eyes that they were lucidly aware in the dream lab. And then they could see what the EEG, how it changed once the person was lucidly aware. And so they called it a hybrid state of consciousness. So there's that neurological evidence. Also, Martin Dressler in Europe, he brought a lucid dreamer into the sleep lab where they had an fMRI and also an EEG skull cap on the person inside the fMRI and a bunch of sound absorbing equipment so the person wouldn't get wakened by the sound of the machine. And so the person signaled that they were lucidly aware, and they captured the parts of the brain that were most active in the lucid dream. And they were the parts that had to do with a self, the decision-making abilities of a self. You have to decide, am I going to punch out that dream figure? Am I going to fly away? What am I going to do here? Because that's what you decide in a lucid dream. So again, there's some wonderful scientific evidence, and I hope you'll investigate that. Okay, Eve writes, what about a strong inner resistance to even remembering your dreams? Like feeling like there's something like an inner wall blocking you, quite on purpose, to enter the world of dreaming. And so, this is a wonderful example because sometimes I've had people sign up for my 30-day online lucid dreaming courses, and what do they tell me? They have a fear of dreaming. I remember this happened about 3 months ago. This young person, they signed up for the course. They wanted to lucid dream, but they told me that dreams were horrible, nasty, horrible, dreadful affairs. And and so it was really interesting. We were online at a Zoom session, and so I just asked the person, because my inner awareness suggested this, and I told him, look, just do the practices. Just do the practices that I'm asking you this week to practice to become lucidly aware. And the next week, the guy reported having his first lucid dream ever. And when he gave the dream report, it wasn't a nasty, mean lucid dream. He was in the living room with his family. Maybe that was horrific for him. I don't know. But in any case, he became lucidly aware and realized it was a dream. But you're right, Yves. Some people have a resistance to remembering their dreams. Now, oftentimes, what I've found is this, that some of these people had a lot of nightmares. And so if you've had a lot of nightmares, dreaming is a horrific place. Why remember all that horrific stuff? And so on an unconscious level, they shut it down. They just shut it down. Once I was giving a workshop in Colorado, a young guy raised his hand and he said that in 10 years, he has not remembered one single dream. And so I asked him, how old are you? And he said, 26. And I said, okay, what happened to you when you were 16? And he said, oh yeah, my parents had a horrible divorce. And I go, okay, sometimes when we have traumatic stuff going on in our life, we begin to have nightmares or whatever, and we shut down dream recall because we can barely handle waking life. And so we shut down dream recall. And so I said, here's what I want you to do. Tonight before you go to sleep, reach out to your inner self or your mind and tell your inner self or your mind that now you're ready to begin to remember your dreams. Now you're ready to begin to remember your dreams. That's all you have to do. So the next morning, I'm walking through the hall and I see this kid, and as soon as he sees me, he starts dancing around the hall. And I said, what happened? And he said, I did exactly what you said. Before I went to sleep, I told my inner self, now I allow myself to remember my dreams. He said, it was so wild. He said, it was like he fell asleep, and it was like slide after slide of dream image the whole night long. He said he probably saw 1,000 images. He said it was so wild, and he was so happy that he could begin to remember dreams. So again, if you're one of these people who can't even remember your dreams, ask your inner awareness to help you recall and see what happens. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so KS, what is the difference between lucid dreaming and dreaming? Okay, every night, all of us fall asleep and have dreams. All of us do, unless we've had a frontal lobotomy or something like that. We all have dreams. So about 23% of the night on average, we spend in the dream state. And so if you sleep 8 hours, that basically means 2 hours you spend in the dream state throughout the night. It comes in certain periods throughout the night. So a dream is an non-volitional mental experience that occurs during sleep. It just happens naturally. A lucid dream is realizing within the dream that you're dreaming. Now you bring this conscious awareness that, oh, this is a dream, and because it's a dream, now I can decide what it is I want to do. Do I want to fly? Do I want to dance with dream figures? Do I want to walk through a wall? And all. So that's the fundamental difference between dreaming, happens naturally, there's no volition, it just occurs because it's a part of human nature for it to occur, and a lucid dream, realizing within the dream that you're dreaming. And of course, there's all sorts of techniques that people like myself and in my books, I teach on how to become lucidly aware. So Patricia asked, when I worked in sleep research, people always ask that. Can they tell what people are dreaming? But EEGs are very far from knowing that. So I think she's getting to the earlier comment by the gentleman, could AI figure out what you're actually dreaming by virtue of EEG patterns, et cetera? And so Patricia says, we're in the very early stages. and we got a long way to go. So thanks, Patricia, for adding that. Jim asked, I only get lucid lately on glantamine, even though I've tried for years and only had a few without the drug. Do you suggest regular use of glantamine? So, Jim, here's a good one. So my friend Ed Kellogg has a PhD in biochemistry from Duke University. So he began to wonder, is glantamine actually effective in helping people have lucid dreams? And so this is what he did. He got 20 empty pill capsules that were all the same. In 10 of the pill capsules, he put the glantamine mixture that he had ordered from somewhere online. And in the other 10, he put some inert substance like cornstarch or something. And then he numbered each of the pills and he gave them to a friend. And he said, whenever I ask for a pill, randomly pick one and then write down the number that you gave me. Like I gave you the pill from envelope number 8. Because later Ed wanted to see if it was a glantamine pill or a placebo, a cornstarch pill. And Ed reported after doing this study, he actually had more lucid dreams on placebo than he did on glantamine. And he said the stunning thing that really blew his mind, on some of the nights where he took the placebo, he had the full-on glantamine experience. And for those who aren't familiar, I'm not going to go into all the details of how glantamine or chemically induced lucid dreams differ from what I'd consider non-chemically induced lucid dreams. So Jim, here's what I'm trying to get across. If you believe that you need glantamine, then your belief makes it so. That's what I'm trying to get to. So I don't like glantamine because it makes me feel energetically exhausted the next morning. And also it changes the nature of my lucid dreams. They're more stable, but they're shallow. They're fantastical, more so than a regular lucid dream. I rarely think, oh yeah, now that I'm in this lucid dream state, I should do something. Somehow that capacity isn't. So I've only probably taken glantamine 4 or 5 times. I don't care for it, but I do know that some people have come to rely on it. So thank you for asking that. I don't suggest regular use of glantamine. I suggest using your mind and becoming lucid dreaming naturally. So Amber writes, I've crossed through almost anything in a lucid dream, but not mirrors. I've probably tried more than 20 times to go through a mirror, just like anything else. But no matter what I do, it just seems absolutely solid, which is weird. So my question is, how is a mirror different from anything else in a dream? Is it just my mind pulling a trick on me all these years? You know, what an interesting experience. So there's a woman, Pascal, who runs the Lucid Dreaming Forum, ldforall.com. And there they have oftentimes, or once upon a time, would have monthly goals to achieve in a lucid dream. And oftentimes they would use mirrors. And like I remember one time, she became lucidly aware. She was looking at a mirror and she announced, now show me the beginning and end of the universe. And so she's expecting to see it in the mirror, the beginning and the end of the universe. And suddenly she hears this non-visible voice reply, the universe has no beginning and has no end. The universe is an everlasting cycle. And so I bring this up as a way of mentioning my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. I found that in lucid dreams, you could ask a question, you could ignore the dream figures and ask a question. I don't need a mirror, I just look up and say what my request or question is, and then I'll hear normally from a non-visible voice a response. And so it was interesting that in Pascal's situation, It occurred by virtue of looking into a mirror and asking the question. So what she says is that sometimes in her group, people would use mirrors to jump into new scenes. They would stand in front of a mirror and they'd say, "Now show me ancient Egypt." And suddenly in the mirror would be some pyramids and all. And so they would jump into the mirror and they would find themselves in that dreamscape of ancient Egypt. So I don't know what's going on here, Amir. How do you feel about mirrors? Are mirrors a reflection of yourself, and therefore you cannot move through yourself in this way? I don't really know what's going on there, but it's a wonderful thing to play with. So congratulations on your tries, and thanks for sharing that. So Chris writes, "Why do we call the movement of our eyes during dreaming rapid eye movement? But when we are awake, we don't call this rapid eye movement. Aren't the eye movements exactly the same?" So Chris, wonderful question. So what a lot of us would notice if we look at a baby who's asleep, and there's a large chance that they've immediately moved into a dream state, you'll see their eyes moving randomly, left, right, all over the place. And so what researchers at the University of Chicago discovered back in the late 50s is that rapid eye movement, or this kind of eyes moving all over the place during sleep, is highly correlated with dreaming. Whenever they woke people up who were in this period of rapid eye movement, they recorded, oh yeah, I was just dreaming that I was at my grandparents' house, blah, 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 blah. So that all that work comes from way back when. Are eye movements different? I would say on some levels, they're fundamentally the same, but here's the difference. Right now, my finger, I'm watching my finger and my eyes are moving in tandem. In a regular dream, your eyes are moving every which way, and this eye might be looking this way and this eye looking that way. So there's a lack of connection in terms of how they're paired. But again, this would be for a specialist to get into. So the eye movements aren't exactly the same. There's fundamental differences. Okay, Douglas Turner. "I have been lucid dreaming since I was a teenager in the early 70s. It began as what I feel was a side effect of self-hypnosis and out-of-body experiences that I was inducing as I went to sleep each night. I had a traumatic experience and discontinued my travels until the last couple of years when I learned what I was doing and that my experiences were not unsafe. At any rate, my lucid dreaming has been primarily induced directly from a wakeful state, or awake-induced lucid dreaming. I'm recently having difficulty recognizing when I am dreaming when I enter from a sleeping state. I've been experimenting and studying dream yoga, and accepting that all is a dream has, I feel, made me accepting of all that occurs in waking and sleeping consciousness. Therefore, is it possible that I'm just too accepting and not triggering the critical thinking process? Also, just recently, I've been recognizing my dream state just as I am waking and am unable to stabilize or re-enter the dream and continue to wakefulness." So Douglas, thanks for sharing that. I would suggest that all this a dream is not helping you. Not at all. So in my second book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, I share the technique that allowed me to get up to having 30 lucid dreams a month. And it's a certain mindfulness technique. And I'll just briefly explain what it is. I don't know if people will be able to understand it, but this is what I began to do. I had been reading the works of Jane Roberts, and in this series of books, the Seth books, she talks more or less that we, along with our larger awareness, create our personal experience. So we create our reality, or co-create it, and all. So by virtue of our beliefs, expectation, focus, intent, emotions, and all that. So here's what I began to do. I began to ask myself, every time I saw anything strange, I'd ask myself, what beliefs, ideas, emotions, expectations do I have that brought this into my perceived experience? So if I was I was in college at the time, if I was going to school and I saw a taxi suddenly stop and a woman jump out and yell at the taxi driver, I'd stop and I'd say, what beliefs, ideas, emotions, expectations do I have that brought this strange experience into my perceived experience? And so I began to do this like 5 or 6 times a day. Whenever I saw anything odd, like I'd be walking down the sidewalk and a little 4-year-old child would smile at me, I'd stop and think, okay, what expectation, belief, emotion, idea did I have that brought that into my experience? So then here's what began to happen. In the dream state, whenever anything strange would happen, I'd ask myself, what beliefs, expectations, emotions, ideas do I have that brought this into my experience? And then I go, wait a second, this is just way too bizarre. This has to be a dream. And this got me up to having 30 lucid dreams a month. So this was mindfully examining or critically examining my perceived experience during the waking state. Then it transferred over into the sleep state, into the dream state, where I began to examine things more closely, and I was becoming lucid all the time. So again, all this a dream, I think it's harming your dream likelihood of becoming lucidly aware. And so therefore, if I were you, I'd let that go. And if you haven't read my second book, I'd get that and read about my critically examining perceived reality technique. Thanks very much, and congratulations. V writes, is it normal to hear loud gushing noises when you become aware that you're lucid and throughout? This happens to me often, and I can also find my heart racing. So V, what you're experiencing is characteristic, or appears characteristic, of what people call an out-of-body experience. So you tell yourself you want to have a lucid dream, but all of a sudden you begin to feel this weird energy, this loud humming, buzzing, maybe around your head, maybe around your entire body. You might feel like you're perceiving your bedroom from 6 feet above your bed. You might see your arm, but it's silvery, full of silvery light and all. This is what people call an out-of-body experience. So what I would suggest is that you might want to try to find a different technique to induce lucid dreams. You can find them in my websites and all, and give that a go, because what you're experiencing is something on the continuum of consciousness connected to lucid dreaming, but is fundamentally doesn't meet the definition of lucid dream. Okay, Clifford ends on a very philosophical note. What differentiates current waking reality from any other? Right. So again, waking reality is your perceived experience of it. Do you perceive Robert Waggoner as Robert Waggoner is? No. You perceive your version of Robert Waggoner. And I perceive my version of Clifford Flowers and the intent of your question. I don't even perceive your question as you perceived it. I perceive it as I view it. So again, we're caught in an realm of perceived experiences. We like to call them realities, but they're perceived experiences. And when we change, the perceived experience change. And you see that in lucid dreaming all the time. So this is a wonderful philosophical question. And that's why if you read my first book, you'll see how I came to answer that. I began to see that lucid dreaming was a mentally mediated experience. Dreaming was a mentally mediated experience. And then I finally had to admit that waking was a mentally mediated experience. And by mentally mediated, I mean that my beliefs, expectation, focus, intent, and all are involved in my perception of what I'm experiencing. So that was 20 years into lucid dreaming when I decided that if there is a real reality, I had to let go of the mental mediation. I had to let go of beliefs, expectation, focus, intent, self-history, and all of that. And if you read my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, you can see what happens. I would fall asleep and the entire night was nothing but light. And so again, this is why lucid dreaming gets connected to Buddhist dream yoga, is because after a while, people began to search for a real reality as they got deeper into lucid dreaming. And that's why Naropa said that Buddhist dream yoga was one of the 6 paths. So again, it's a wonderful philosophical question. Jim writes, has anyone ever tried to train quadriplegics to dream lucidly to give them experience of freedom again? Love both of your books. This Lucid Dreaming Experience Magazine, I'm also connected to the Lucid Dreaming Foundation, which is a nonprofit. What we do is for people who are in prison, we'll send them, if they request it, a free print copy of the magazine Lucid Dreaming Experience. Because I've heard from a lot of prisoners, for 20 years now, I've been co-editing the Lucid Dreaming Experience Magazine, along with my good friend, Lucy Gillis. And we've heard from a number of prisoners who tell us that their only moments of freedom are within a lucid dream. And as a result of that, they're totally into lucid dreaming because it gives them freedom. So again, people could train anyone to have lucid dreams, whether you're quadriplegic or paraplegic or whatever. And again, you could adopt those abilities that you had once upon a time and all. So my thanks to all of you for asking some wonderful questions, some interesting philosophical questions too. And also my thanks to worldofluciddreaming.com and Jake Thompson there for inviting me to be part of this. Again, I'm Robert Waggoner, and I hope you'll check out that article on psychological resistance to lucid dreaming that's in this current issue of the Lucid Dreaming Experience Magazine that anyone can read for free. Just go to luciddreamingmagazine.com. So thanks everyone, and goodbye.